Howdy y'all, I wanted to do a quick video discussing the introduction to Regulation H, so think of this as like a bonus video on the channel. It's going to be a little bit less edited, but I do have a video planned for a couple weeks from now, where I'll hopefully have some more composed thoughts after we've seen things like example online tours, where we'll be going over some more like practical analysis, but I wanted to give my first thoughts as I think the format has a lot of interesting pieces to it. So hopefully you enjoy it, and if you want to see more content like this whenever future Rulesets are announced or other big VGC changes are announced, like and subscribe. We're pretty close to 2,500 actually at the time of recording this, so if anyone wants to help us hit that number quicker, it would be greatly appreciated. But with that said, let's break down the Regulation H rules, because honestly we got a pretty interesting format. Now I know this has been something that a lot of players have been looking forward to for a while, which is essentially going to be a VGC format that bans Pokemon like Urshifu, Flutterman, etc., but it allows the rest. We thought this would come right after the Indigo Disc DLC, but it ended up actually taking until after Worlds. But having this during the offseason I think makes a lot of sense. As far as banned Pokemon though, this literally bans any Legendary, Paradox, etc. So we have options here, as you can see, like we have the Legendary Birds, Mewtwo, the Legendary Dogs, obviously Mythicals are still banned, but we can keep going down the list of banned Pokemon as we, just Legendaries, all the typical stuff like Genies. We have Battlebond Gren, because again, Battlebond Greninja is an event pick, stuff like that. Obviously the, Magearna, Zacians, etc. And then we can even go down though, and stuff like Urshifu is banned, which is really cool. It's the first format, I think, since ever that Urshifu has been banned from, that it was like introduced in the game since Series 6. Which, like, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. But we also have, like, the Paradox Mons ban, which is cool. So, like, no Great Tusk. That's a little sad. I can't lie. I'm a big Tusk girly. But we do have Fluttermane that is also banned. I love Fluttermane, so that was really sad, but it's a cool change. Ruins are banned, though. Obviously, like, the Loyal Trio is banned, so they'll never be good in VGC, obviously. Ogerpon's banned. We have the new Paradox Mons, Terapagos, Petrons. Like, all this stuff is banned. So this is obviously going to change a lot of the format in terms of what's viable. For context, if we were to pull up the usage stats actually, and I can pull those up on screen here in just a moment, we could look at how many Pokemon get taken off of, like, well, we'll go through like the top 20 usage. So looking at the top 20 usage, right? This is for the Wi-Fi, to be fair. So for the in-game, they do things a little bit weird, like they merge all the Ogerpon forms, for example. But even still, it's really just more for just argument's sake. We have our number 1 Pokemon, we have our number 4 Pokemon, our number 5 Pokemon, our number 6 Pokemon, our number 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 16, and 20 among just the top 20. I think it's like literally, let me get an exact count. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of our top 20 are getting banned. And to be fair, this is a pretty different format, but I don't think I can pull up, can I pull up Reg F on Switch? I can't pull up Reg F on Switch. That's really unfortunate, actually. But I mean, I could probably pull it up on, I'll pull up the Showdown set at the very least, because at minimum, that's still something. We'll just need to be a bit more specific. But for context, if we go through like even still, even if we go through like top 10%, this is the last non-restricted format. So everything with like 10% and above, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bans. Again, like it's a pretty high amount of Pokemon that get affected by this, and they're all like really relevant picks too. Like we've been fearing Raging Bull ever since its introduction. Urshifu's never something we haven't feared. Flutterman has been a mon we have feared since Regulation B, and it's not that any of these Pokemon are like objectively broken picks. You can maybe argue that pre-Raging Bull Urshifu Rapid was, but otherwise, I mean, there's not really anything that I think is like inherently broken other than Urshifu, which is the closest. But at the same time though, like they're Pokemon that have been very influential in team building. A lot of players have been relying on these Pokemon for like the entirety of their last year. So seeing the format change up like this is a big deal. I think it's a new way to allow players in the 2025 scene to get some sort of entry into the format, dip their toes in with the non-legendary Pokemon. I was gonna say non-Ubers, but like some of these are obviously not, like Raging Bolt's not like a VGC Uber style Pokemon or anything. But it's essentially like a way to test with the non-legends and then ebb your way in, then we add in some Paradox Mons, etc. We can kind of go through like the whole Reg B approach into Reg C and add like the Ruins and like the Loyal Trio and stuff like that, and really edge our way closer to Worlds yet again. And I think it'll be a nice way to just kind of allow players to reintroduce themselves who might not have been in the format at the time before we get into like a double restricted Worlds, which will probably be the case now. So I do like the idea personally. I think it's a pretty cool idea. And I think it will change a lot of what's used, which is really cool because it's going to be a nice way to just even out the playing field post-Worlds. I think if we didn't end up doing a format like this, we would have ended up doing something like double restricted right after Worlds into some sort of like mythical allowed, and then like I don't even know where we really go from there, and it just would have been messy. It would have been very messy. So I do like this route as opposed to maybe doing like a usage-based one. I think it's a really cool concept for the format, especially this late into VGC's life cycle for Scarlet and Violet. So I am kind of curious about how the format will age. But we do obviously have some big Pokemon to be replacing here. Even if we just look at the Regulation F usage, right? There are a lot of Pokemon here that are really fucking relevant. Like, we have no really good Raging Bolt replacement because, frankly, there's just not a lot of good Special Electrics. I made a tier list, which I'll go over at the end of the video, of my predictions for viable Pokemon. And I want you guys to know I don't think there's an Electric type on the tier list. Like, I don't even... I looked through the highest ranking Electric type that I can find, unless I'm blind, and I might very well be blind. Someone pointed out in the comments if they notice one. Gets in our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th tier, and it is not an offensive Electric. There is not a single offensive Electric type that actually made the tier list. Rotom maybe could have made the tier list, I'm gonna be honest, but I don't think it would have kept up with a lot of these Pokemon. But it somehow might unironically be one of the best offensive Electrics, which is... that's a discussion to be had, I'm going to be honest. We don't have a good Raging Bolt replacement. We really do not. Urshifu Rapid's also a mon we don't really replace well. Typically, we'd be looking for like either a Protect Breaker, which we don't have, or like a really good Crit Mon. I guess that best case scenario is probably Meowscarada. But it's a whole different beast, and the fact that you don't match up well in an instant with that is a really bad thing for that mon. Fluttermane does have some replacements, but it's not ever in one slot. Fluttermane being a ghost fairy was such a good thing. We have offensive ghosts like Goldango that can put up some decent work, or you could maybe even argue like Gengar, but I think the format power level is too high for that even still. And then meanwhile on the fairy type end, we actually can fill that with a lot of picks, and I'll get into those more when we introduce other later picks. But like most of those top 3 alone like are very irreplaceable. Or even if we go into things like Iron Hands, yeah, you know, we can fill it to a degree with a pick like Hariyama. That's a nice trigger fighting type still. But there's a lot of things that Hariyama can't do that Iron Hands could, such as a really powerful electric stab, which was very damning, just as a nice secondary stab. Or the fact that it's a lot worse of an Assault Vest Pokemon because the bulk is just worse on Hariyama than Iron Hands. Guts is a cool ability, but I feel like there's just a lot more merit to running Iron Hands just on any team, despite the fact that you get wide guard support, which is still really cool. That is a reason to use Hariyama, but I just don't think it'll be enough. So in terms of what the format will be bringing, we have a lot of new things. But I do want to quickly break down a tier list that I think will paint a really good picture of where I think the early format's going to sit. All right, so looking through the end of the video tier list, this is essentially where I'm going to go a couple lines at a time because I think it's the best way to introduce this. That way then you guys can kind of get my top to bottom analysis. I think it's the best way to go about this. So obviously for the top 2 tiers, we have our very centralized threats and our Pokemon that I would still view as very good. In terms of centralized threats, I think the difference here is that I feel like you're going to see these Pokemon as like the defining pieces on their archetypes, whereas the very good Pokemon I still think will be very common, and they will enable a lot of Pokemon in our lower tiers as well as our centralized threats to be as prevalent. But I don't think the format will necessarily revolve around them. Like Clefairy will not be the thing the format revolves around, but it will be a good assistance to a lot of these other Pokemon. Like Clefairy Goldango, for example, will be a great core. But as far as the centralizing threats go, we have Whimsicott, which will now just be our premier Tailwind setter. We have Amoonguss. Amoonguss Instant Rillaboom honestly should shock no one. If it does, you just haven't played Gen 9 VGC or really any VGC since like ever, to be honest. Like I can't name a generation where Amoonguss has been like an actually bad Pokemon. Maybe not like a number 1 Pokemon or like a number 5 Pokemon or something like that. But I can't really name a generation where it's ever been objectively just a bad pick. Same goes for Instant since Intimidate, and same goes for Rillaboom since Grassy Glide. Like, these Pokemon just aren't bad. Even Rillaboom without Grassy Glide was, like, a good Pokemon in early Scarlet Violet. So, like, these are just good Pokemon. Blurse has been really fucking good since its introduction. This thing is just going to be a great Hyper Voice spammer, and it will probably be one of the best wall breakers in the tier still, especially with the loss of a lot of the Paradox Mons, which could have maybe competed with that role. This thing will just be, like, the objective best special wall breaker now. Goldango is pretty interesting. I think this will take a lot of the Fluttermane role in terms of just an offensive ghost. It is by far the best ghost type now because Fluttermane is no longer here. I think there are some interesting counterplay options that I will get into later on, but I think Goldengo will be a pretty good steel type. It was already one of the best mons in Reg A, and frankly, there is not a lot that got added here. I think it's like Instant and Blurse that really actually give it trouble. Otherwise, though, I mean, it's still Goldengo, and Goldengo was like a top 5 mon in early format. And it does match up well into Amoonguss still, which will be phenomenal. It matches up well into a lot of the other, like, very good and solid picks. Like, we'll see a lot of stuff, and you're just going to kind of see Goldengo fodder as we go through. Archuludon will go crazy. I have heard a lot of people speculating Archuludon Rain will become like a premier comp. I really completely agree with that sentiment. I think Archuludon Rain is going to be like the best weather that the format revolves around now that a lot of the Paradox mons are gone. I think we'll see Rain as like an all-time best archetype, I guess, as far as weather goes, that we've had all gen ever since like Reg B and C Sun. So I'm very curious to see how Archuludon Rain does. I think it will be an all-time high for that. The very good picks have a lot of good supports here. We have things like Clefairy, P2, Pelipper, and Torkoal for weather, obviously, though Torkoal will more be for like trick room breaking because of the fact we lost a lot of good Sun mons, though there are still some good ones I'll get into. Prim will be interesting. I think this is going to be the best fairy type in the format, personally. I think as far as like an actual fairy type, because Clefairy's more here for just supporting moveset and ability rather than its typing. But I think Prim will be the actual best fairy type for a fairy type, if that makes sense. You know, you're using Clefairy for your after you, follow me, helping hand stuff. And meanwhile, you're going to be using Primarina for Moonblast and Dazzling Gleam, which will hit very hard. We have Indeedee, which is going to be here more for size spam. I do think that Indeedee will exist on comps outside of size spam, though, just because it can clear relevant terrain. Meanwhile, for Rig will still be decent. I think it's going to match up a lot better than it did in Reg A, even though it was a decent mon in Reg A, because now we're not just dealing with Palafin before anyone knew how good Palafin was, but we're also dealing with Incin and Rillaboom, which will be very good priority Pokemon. So I think for Rig will still just keep its usage. We have Sinistcha, which is a good Trick Room piece. I think this will personally be one of the best Trick Room mons in the format. It's going to be great with things like Blurse, Goldengo, but also other mons like Torkoal Eruption spamming, which will be a lot more viable now. I think it'll be decent on size spam. It'll be decent with a lot of comps, in my opinion. But the big thing I think that might surprise people in these two set of tiers is probably Palafin being so low. I feel like a lot of people would have put Palafin in centralizing threats, but when I look at Amoonguss, Rillaboom as like two of the best Pokemon, as well as like Archuludon, that's a pretty big annoyance for Palafin too, just defensively, because you will extra shot that thing back very quickly. I think that Palafin will still be very good, but between the Intim from Incineroar, I still think Gyarados will still be a good mon, albeit I did rank it kind of low in comparison, which I'll get into why in a bit. I do think we have enough pieces, though, to where Palafin will not be like a top 5 Pokemon, but it will still be like a Pokemon you need to watch out for sure. Moving on, we do have a couple other picks for tiering. We have, going into next, our Pokemon that I think are solid, our 2-3s. These are a lot of good damage breakers, mostly. This tier is mostly like really high damage Pokemon that I think are going to be more like 5th, 6th slot heavy. Things like Arcanine, Hisui, Garchomp, Gallade a great one for size spam. We have some good Pokemon that are just great wall breakers like Volcarona, Sylveon, Como, and Hatterene. Hatterene especially I think will be cool on size spam. We have a lot of 2-2-2 stuff in here too. Like for example, we have we have Clefairy in our very good, plus Annihilate in our solid tier. That's a good 2-2-2 core. We have Dozogiri, we have Hatterene and the Indeedee or Armors in the Indeedee. Those both compete with size spam, so I figured I'd put them both in solid because neither one really outclasses the other. We also just have some good Sun components starting off here, like Hisui Lilligant. This is probably where I think that Hisui Lilligant borderline is like the best Sun abuser, just because of the fact that you do have the After You being really fast at 105 base, as well as Sleep Powders, which could be pretty cool. I also think this mon could be a decent coaching support, with like Sleep Powder coaching on a Sun team next to some good physical abuser. Again, Hisui Arcanine really comes to mind there. But we do also have some stuff like maybe Inner Focus Dragonite could be cool. I'm pretty sure we've seen Dragonite on Sun in other formats anyway. Or even just a good Clear Amulet Pokemon could be nice. Something like Garchomp could be cool at clearing through other fire types that might abuse your Sun. There's a lot of good picks in my opinion for that spot. But overall, I do think that this C tier, well, I guess this third tier of Pokemon could be good. There's a lot of stuff here. I can really only spend so much time on it. The D tier, or the fourth tier of Pokemon, these are probably like around like B tier picks. I think we had to go, it's like S plus, then S, then A, then B, and then we'll go like C, D, E, F. But this would probably be like our B tier with the picks, with stuff like Venusaur, for example. Essentially, these Pokemon all probably, for the most part, there are a few exceptions, but a lot of these Pokemon get outclassed by something directly in the tier above. Things like Venusaur is outclassed as a good Sleep Powder Sun pick. We have A9, which just, I think that the weather itself is outclassed. There's obviously like T-Tar, again, weather being outclassed. Primarina, I think, will just be outclassed for physical water or for the water fairy typing from Prim. Stuff like that, I think there's some really good picks here that are rather unique. Things like AV Metagross, I just think there's a lot better steel types, that was all. G Weezing will be cool. I just don't know how many abilities of your own team you're going to want to shut off, but there are a lot of Pokemon this thing could really affect. Like being able to shut down Intimidate, Grassy Surge, obviously good as Gold. Like, there are a lot of abilities you could really just shut down quickly with G Weezing, and I think that it could be a decent pick. We also do have some returning threats, things like Hydreigon, Skeletor's, and Meowscarada from Regulation A. All of these were massive powerhouses. However, Incineroar returning does hurt Skeletor's and Meowscarada a lot. I still think they'll see some play, though, just due to the fact that we're missing a lot of faster threats. And, well, at least for Meowscarada's case. And then for Skeletor's case, I just think it matches up really well into things like Dozo with Terra. And you could make this a really good Terra pick. It is really good anti-format with Terra right now, looking at a lot of what is decent. And then Hydreigon, I think, will still have a place just because, again, we're missing Flutter Mane. So while there are still a lot of good fairies, I think that we could still see Terra Fire pop off. It did, even with Sylveon being like a #1 Pokemon at times for usage. So I think Hydreigon will still keep that. But overall, I mean, there's a lot of picks here. I think a lot of it's just either like good 5th, 6th slots right now or like end of 2023 VGC. Things like Oranguru is really good end of 2023 VGC, which is really good all format as like a good niche pick. Or you have stuff that like kind of popped off at like an event or two maybe. Or just as potential. I think the biggest sleeper here really in like these two tiers is probably like Drill or Kingdra. These both are going to be huge without having things like Iron Bundle and Flutter Mane outpacing them. And they'll both be absolutely viable Pokemon finally. And I do expect full results from these things. Like, I think we'll get a regional win off of at least one of those Pokemon, if not both. We do have, I'm just going to go through the rest all at once. We have our could-be usables. I think that these are things like Hariyama. Hariyama's going to struggle a lot more as just a fake-out option, but it could be cool with things like Wide Guard being useful for Pokemon like Extra with Rock Slide or other size spam weak teams. We have our Bombi. This is a cool one I actually saw on Twitter, but the fake-out immunity plus being a fast fairy, it's one of the fastest Pokemon in the format naturally right now. So, like, I think that could actually hold some merit. We have Lycanroc Day. I'm not sure if this will hold up in an extra troll meta, but it is technically one of the fastest weather abusers we have. Could maybe see some play. I've been speculating with my good pal Hopeless on Channeler's viability as a good Tail Room mon with, like, Imprisoned Trick Room. Being able to function as a Tailwind sweeper as well as a good Trick Room abuser for Tailwind teams. It could maybe have some merit. I think Murkrow might pop off as a good Dozo check again, because Dozo will be at like the best it's been in probably about a year. Though I think that Wims will just kind of outclass it as a whole, and the typing on Wims is really good for checking Dozo, so I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to see. Then we have some like lower power level mons that were decent, like Ceruledge, now that his Poltergeist can actually be like a really good threat. Bramble could be cool, Poltergeist, and just in general, its typing isn't bad. But overall, though, I think this tier is a lot more situational. We have the niche picks. Follow Measers, obviously. Jump Off is cool on Sun. Arcanine's okay for a team that just likes the defensive fire. Croak is good for the team that needs a ground type, but also needs that dark type Intimidate mon that Incineroar would have provided. We have Conk. Conk could be cool for like mashing Incin teams. Like, there's some niche in these mons. Abomasnow specifically, I think, is the one thing I think actually is like a really relevant space, though. This is probably one of the best Dozo checks you just have in the game. And Dozo, again, will probably be at an all-time high for the past year or so. So watch out. This could be a good pick. Gimmick, these Pokemon all kind of suck, but they'll see some play. Like Charizard could be a cool Solar Power Sunmon, but it's going to suck. Alcremie for Decorate. We have Revival Blessing spam, but it's bad. Spathra is more for like Speed Boost, Gravity, Hypnosis shit. And then we have Co-Star. And then we have, these might get used, but like it's Spore, it still sucks. Prankster Tailwind still sucks. And this is more for Sun with like Healing Wish, still sucks. There's some other unranked Pokemon here. Obviously, a lot of these, to be fair, are legendaries, but we do have some other, like, maybe potential noteworthy picks, like maybe Lapras could abuse Terra, I guess. Or, like, Hisui Typhlosion, I guess, maybe. But, like, I'm not expecting anything that's not ranked here to even do anything. But, yeah, so those are my thoughts for the initial Regulation H introduction. If I missed something that you think could be viable, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on what you're going to be trying first. And if you enjoyed and want to see more content like this, of course, like and subscribe for more. We upload tons of content on the channel, usually a lot more edited than this, and Sunday's video, when it goes live at 4 p.m., will be a lot more edited than this. I just wanted to try and get this out for you guys as quickly as possible, so anyone watching the channel knew my thoughts on the meta. But I'll try and get some more organized thoughts and get like a comprehensive like how to play Regulation H guide going for you within, not the next video, but it will hopefully be the video after that, maybe one more further. Just depends on, I guess, how quickly I can get composed thoughts down. Also, if you want to help out the channel some more, of course, consider becoming a member. It's just a couple dollars a month, and the money goes towards the editors. They didn't handle this video. I was not giving them less than a day to work on a video, so I'm handling this one myself. But Becca typically does our short form content, and Dose handles all the long form stuff. I'm going to link their stuff down below anyway, because even though, again, they didn't have their hands on this video, they help out with a lot of the channel, so I really appreciate it. And with that said, I'll see you guys later. Until then, peace out, guys.